Hi everyone, welcome to the Vital Voices series featuring artist Chummeng Soun. My name is Krista Brown. Before we get started, we have lots of people to thank. A little bit about Free Soil. We are an arts organization based in Lowell, Massachusetts, and our mission is to amplify voices of color through the arts. So that's what the Vital Voices series is all about. First, I want to thank Enterprise Bank, who is our presenting sponsor, for making this event possible. I also want to thank the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, our fiscal sponsor, for helping to support Free Soil Arts Collective since our beginning, which is 2019. I also want to especially thank the Anchor Dance Troupe for partnering with us on bringing this event to life. For anyone out there who may not be familiar with them, the Anchor Dance Troupe was established in November 1986 when Tim Tu and a passionate group of Cambodian refugees came together in Lowell, Massachusetts with the sole purpose to revive a culture once almost lost. At the heart of the Cambodian community, the Anchor Dance Troupe is nationally recognized as one of the most accomplished and experienced US-based Cambodian traditional arts organizations. Also, a reminder throughout our conversation, please, you can follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on the Twitter, we are on the LinkedIn, not the TikTok, but that's another TikTok. And then also please follow Chummeng Soun on social media. He is on Instagram, the Office of Underexplored with underscores in between. Also a website, chummengsounstudio.myportfolio.com. Be sure to check that out. So we're gonna jump in the conversation. Chummeng, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I got my coffee down here. I'm good.
I'm excited to be here and
Thank
share my work. Yeah.
Thank you. Us too. So for folks out there who may not be familiar with you and your work, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Chummeng Soun, and I work closely with the Anchor Dance Troupe, and I've been dancing with them for so long, since I was 11, 12, and Tim actually found me at an after-school program in the Butler Middle School, and he just picked me up, and then I began dancing, and I began my career with the dance troupe. And throughout my career at the dance troupe, I was able to build relationship with RUFA, the Royal University of Fine Art, doing cultural exchange, and I was going to also travel back and forth between the dance troupe and the secondary school of fine art in Cambodia, and then I was working with the Royal University of Fine Art, and then also working with numerous masters around the world. Even privileged to work with the dance troupe in France. So
wow.
we share this beautiful network of relationship with the dance troupe.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked to me about was that you consider yourself a practicing artist.
Yes.
Why do you use that phrasing?
I only use the phrase practicing artist because as a dancer, this dance has huge influence in all my work. As a dancer, my master said, if you have time to sit, you have time to practice. So the strictness of my master teacher, if you have time to sit, you have time to practice. So if you're taking a break, you should be moving your hand. And so that mentality keeps in the back of my head. The minute you stop practicing, is the minute you cannot find your hand position, you find your feet position. Or the minute you stop practicing, your muscle is gonna become lazier and lazier. And so that mentality, that strictness, precision in movements has always been in the back of my head. And each master teacher I go through, they ingrain this in me. And so I carried that throughout my art career, even going to UMass Lowell to get my degree in fine art.
Wow. And you've been a practicing artist for 15 years now, and you will always be a practicing artist.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The idea of practicing artist doesn't exist in the Cambodian community, because to say as I'm practicing dance, right? We don't say we're practicing artists. We go there because we have to, or because we love our culture and continue. It was up until I went to college, I realized, oh, this is what a practicing artist is. This is what art is. This is what you guys call art. The idea of dance is just an everyday thing. But we just don't call it art because our master teacher always say, there's a craft in everything you do, from how you live, from how you get up in the morning to how you do your routine every morning. This is it. Make it beautiful so you live your life. And so as much as we're practicing, we're also trained to think that everything you do have intention. Start with that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I'm going to next share a little bit of your personal story. So you talked to me about how the arts found you, and you talked about how you came to Lowell, I think, at 9 years old.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more with us?
Yeah, so my family came to Lowell, Massachusetts in 2005. My dad was here because of the Khmer Rouge, and then he went back, and then he came. So it was a traveling situation for him. But we finally established a new life here in 2005. And when that happened, I think it was me and my sister were one of the only, well, we were the only two siblings that were speaking Khmer during that time. So, in third grade and in fourth grade, so that the school learned a lot from us. But as we transitioned to different school, we were introduced to numerous enrichment after-school program, and then that's how the arts found me. Although I didn't recognize what art is or have the idea of what art is, I was engaging myself in a lot of that. Yeah, it was, like I said, up until college is when I realized, oh, okay, this is hard. I mean, it's in the back of our head often enough. When we go to school as young kids, it's in the back of our head, but it is when we start, I guess, doing it and start recognizing it, it's like, oh, okay, here we go, it's art.
Yeah, I get it. So next, I'm going to share a quote that you actually shared with me from the Cambodian Psyche. And it says, "Fear is a constant reality in the Cambodian psyche. Fear stems from the centuries of complex history, the religious and mythological belief systems, and the social arrangement which characterize Cambodian society. Through the systematic use of force to gain an advantage, the Cambodian population has become conditioned to accept and tolerate fear as the expected human condition. Compounding the effects of fear in the Cambodian experience is the fact that it is submerged and hidden behind a facade of social characteristics, which present a superficial picture of harmony and humility, at least until the recent period of civil strife." And then it says, "Fear is neither identified nor openly recognized as a primary determinant in human psychology or in the context of public affairs by those who would assist Cambodia to resolve its contemporary problems, or indeed by Cambodians themselves."
So, Cambodia faced such a complex history. I mean, from the glory of Angkor Wat to the genocide, to the French colonial, and even to the modern time of Cambodia in 1950, right? This is a large, complex history that the second generation of Cambodian-American have to confront. And so, how do you confront that? Often enough, and sometimes when I'm working in the arts, and not just the art, but in many disciplines, we're confronting a colonized history, right? How do we reclaim our narrative? How do we reclaim our image? How do we reclaim these things, the knowledge that we know, right? It's very complex. And it was only during COVID that I began this new body of work. This is sketch one. This new body of work is really a psychological landscape of what we as the younger generation have to confront living here in Lowell, Massachusetts, right? It is the things around us that we have to start recognizing. And once we do that, we allow ourselves to begin to think more creatively, to begin thinking more freely. So in this body of work, after the Cambodian genocide, many Cambodian were forced to leave their home country in exile, and both refugees and immigrants face many complex reality, intergenerational trauma that leads many family and younger generation to question their belonging. And when we question our belonging, we begin to reconcile with our colonial past. and that shaped our history, that shaped how we think. And my work is to decolonize these ideas, is to break it down, and to really analyze it. And then what is an accumulative understanding of that? So in this sketch, it's an accumulative understanding of how I perceive and see the world, and how these fear are, how my family are conditioned based on the fear we carry. When we first arrived to America, we face hate. Like they call us fob, they call us fresh off the boat, they call us, why don't you speak English? All of this built up and accumulative, and it was only when I started working on these body of work, so I then revisit these constant fear, this constant reality in my head. And I'm not the only one. We all are, right? We're so conditioned to such a society that we forgot to think about it. And so if in the next work, after this iteration, I begin a new piece. This is huge. It's basically, it's longer than this. And this body of work is a collective memory, right? This tradition of oral storytelling, sharing narrative, and in the Cambodian community, not just in the arts, but as a community, we have this tradition of telling story through our mouth because there's no written records. Again, if there's no written record, how do we confront our past? How do we confront our present? And how do you think we should move forward as a collective community? So in this work, right, I begin looking into the process of making and translating the collective narrative in my work, and I use, how I found these form is I use the act of imprint making. And the act of imprint making is basically drawing charcoal on one side and then making an imprint, right? Something I remember is my, as a dancer, is movement, right? So I was able to generate hand movement, and then I began making imprints of these hand movements. And the act of making an imprint is the act of pressing. And when you're pressing on paper against paper, you're making that imprint. That imprint is pressure. Pressure that you're faced against the common society that you're conditioned to, right? So these liquid form are that pressure, right? They're liquefied. They're an accumulative understanding of movement and gesture, but it is the act of making this painting. This painting, drawing, is actually a mixed media of things, printmaking, all come in together. And if we zoom in, your balance, it may look harmonized, much like the quote you just read, right, Krista?
Yes.
It looks harmonized, but if you analyze it closer, the piece juxtaposed against each other, the color juxtaposed against each other, the bomb begin to fall, and then it begins to explode, right? These were the narrative my mom told me as a young kid. She told me she understands when a bomb fell and she can identify what type of bomb it was and how far it is. Right? So when she told that to me, it was always in the back of my head. So when I began producing these work, right, what does it feel like? And so how does it participate in today's world? How does it participate in the liquefied gesture right there, right? And if you recognize this is the Merrimack River right there, right? Water play a critical role in the Cambodian society. Water is the fundamental of plant, crop farming. It is what brought us to our glorious time, the Angkor Wat. It was all due to rice, water irrigation, right? Same thing here. Why do we have the water festival? It's because it's a community gathering. It is because it's a time where we share with one another our generational gap. As it's widening, we're using the festival and art to bridge it together again. And a part of me making my work is to do that, is to participate in the act of making and also participate in the act of having these conversations and bridging these generational gap as it's getting wider. Because that's the only way for us to face our complex history, especially when it's being told orally, right? There is a bunch of written records, right? But do we, Cambodian community, do we have access to them? Does the majority of us know how to access them? right? So this is a question I constantly ask, and I constantly ask the audience as well, as you're going about in your day, do you question this stuff in your community? Do you question this stuff in your community, Krista?
Yep.
Right. It's constant. Let's go to the next slide. Again, that concept, both buildings, architecture, all collapse into one, and a cumulative understanding, cumulative knowledge. And again, that bomb revisit, the situation right there with the lines. I believe that's a part of a building. And even a scribble. Scribble is very gestural, but it is described the repetitiveness of my motion. Yeah.
The symbolism you have, Chummeng, is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I believe the next, can we go to the next slide? Yes.
Yep. Right there. So this is just a quick idea of what that psychological landscape means, and I often investigate the chronological experience of reorganizing oral storytelling, or from a broader experience of the Cambodian vernacular, and by translating material assemblage that functions as a psychological landscape born from fear. And I look into the unfamiliar places and experience of this orientation, and consider a broader range of collectiveness, of personal experience, and oral storytelling, again, as a framework to fully conceptualize my decision in the reinterpretation and the rendering of what that means of disorientation, displacement, and reorganizing that landscape again as that implicit framework. And yeah, as you're looking at this, you can imagine yourself what it feels like to be in the landscape.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a closer look at one of them, and yes, this is again the concept of applying pressure, the act of making an imprint, and how that imprint is being translated to a 3D object, right? And how that 3D object then participate in your life. And yes, when we talk about art, we can also discuss the happy part of it, right? And that is to enrich our lives, right? To help us question ourselves. And these are things that are enriching. This is the things that keeps us going, motivating for us. Yeah. This is another installation, again, exploring that concept of what it means to be in that psychological landscape. And these tubes are actually prints of the drawing, the huge drawing of making the imprints, right? But photograph and iteration over iteration, they create like this marble-looking cylinder form that I reorganize and rearrange and really investigate what it means. And this installation is showcased with the drawing. So,
Wow. And Chummeng, where was this?
this is actually at UMass Lowell during COVID, when the whole building was empty, and only like probably a couple of us were in the building, and spent some time working on these new body of work.
Wow.
Yeah. And each time I reinstall this work, it would be different. And that difference is something that I like. Every time I reinstall it, one can be at the far distant, or one can be a cluster of things. And this is an imagination that I bring with myself, and I want to reclaim as an artist. So yeah, should I start?
Sure
Yeah.
thing, Chummeng.
So this is Stephen Burke. I spent a couple months, 2 to 3 months, working under Stephen as a studio assistant. And what that allows me to do is, one, exchange, right? exchanging ideas, exchanging culturally. It was in New York that I spent the time with Stephen Burke, working both in a gallery setting and in developing concept. And often Stephen would embed this idea of reclaiming that narrative back, thinking about craft, right? Craft participating in your life, and that the craft is a community gathering. Craft is when we come together and we share stories, is when a community built that relationship among one and another and bridging that gap. And Stephen always told me, coming from the African-American imagination. And when you do that, you begin thinking about the simplest gesture of pattern making, the simplest gesture of combination, right? And it is these ideas that I carry with me when I work on numerous body of work, or my current body of work right now is, how do I review what I've done in the past and revisualize it in today's contemporary time? Yeah. And when I do that, I revisit my personal. If you go forward to the next slide, I begin looking in this painting, this book of painting I have, the Rimke. It's a traditional Cambodian painting that I don't know if everyone can see, but in these book, the artist explored not just color and pattern making, but building that to translate as a character, right? And it is this type of pattern that inspired me to develop a new body of work, new body of sketch. If you have time, you can come up. But I have some right here. Yeah. And this is from, imagine it from the Cambodian imagination, right? Purely. And what does that look like? And what can this be a part of? Imagine if it's textile, and this is a conversation I have with Studio Mate. Lo is a textile city. So what if this translates as textile, right? What would that look like? And what if we start wearing them, right? Would it enrich our lives? Will we live, eat, sleep, art now, right? This is it. And when we expand on this imagination, we allow ourselves to reclaim this narrative, and we allow ourselves to break free from that fear, from that psychological fear that is embedded in us since the genocide, and facing our complex history, right? Reclaiming the idea that color combination such as this comes from centuries of discovery, centuries of iteration that our ancestors have been doing, right? But now, what would that be in contemporary time, in today's time? And now, what would it be if this was to be manufactured or produced here in Lo by the hands of BIPOC artists? Right?
What I was so riveted by is this idea of deconstruction. Like, you talked about looking at these images from Cambodian history and deconstructing the patterns. Like you said, what does it look like today? How else has this idea of like deconstruction impacted your work? You also did mention, I want to share, when you even spoke about the Khmer Rouge, and then you said the Cambodian Genocide, and I remember being like, Chummeng, should I be calling it a genocide? And you're like, Khmer Rouge is a French term. Yeah. And can you chat about that a bit more?
Yeah, the word rouge is red in French, right? I mean, we can go by the Khmer Rouge, but I prefer to say the Cambodian Genocide because it's a genocide that killed 1/4 of the population, and out of that 1/4 of the population, 1 artist out of 10 survived the Khmer Rouge. So let's talk about knowledge transmission, right? When knowledge transmission wise, from my teacher to me, we lose 30% of that knowledge. Where does that 30% of knowledge go each generation, right? Imagine from one generation to the next generation to the following generation. 30% slowly accumulate, and that's a lot. In fact, sorry, a little bit out of topic.
You're good.
There was an event hosted in over Zoom, and this is why I love Zoom, is because we're able to share story worldwide. But a group of master teachers from that generation collectively come together and have this conversation. After the Cambodian Genocide, where does that 30% of knowledge go if each generation keep losing it, right? And so I want to give a quick background. A part of the Cambodian system of knowledge transmission, we value the relationship between master to student. And this relationship in modern society is what defines the Cambodian culture. For this reason, the new body of work that I'm visualizing is almost having that dialogue with the master teacher again, not just in creating the final product, but also the process of repetitive act of making, the act that you're constantly practicing, the act that you're constantly going back and doing it, and the act that you're reclaiming this narrative, not from the Khmer Rouge perspective. I mean, one can say from the Khmer Rouge perspective, but I prefer to say the Cambodian Genocide, because we're losing that 30%. And if we don't confront that now, what are we going to do? How are we going to face? On the other side of my work is preservation. I work with master teacher to preserve work as much as I can, and along the journey with the dance troupe as the assistant artistic manager, I work directly with the artistic director to preserve work of Supala. And folklore or classical literature such as this are often enough being told from the perspective of colonized ideas. And what does that mean? You always have a hero. You always have a hero. And then that hero is often enough are the good, right? We don't flip the story. What if we look at this character, right? What can we imagine it to be? That's why oral story is important. When you begin documenting these oral stories through recording, you begin to listen to it and begin to deconstruct it. You begin to find that that each character is unique and their motivation is unique, right? It's such as the Rimke. Often enough, it is told by a colonized idea, right? Where you have the hero, you have the good and the evil. It's more than that. If you listen to it orally, you begin hearing nuance that you wouldn't think you see being staged. Whether it's here, whether it's being staged in America, or being staged in France, or being staged in Cambodia, you begin to see the nuance in which, the motivation of that character is beyond that. The character Rib, which I specialize in when I work with the dance troupe, and that this new body of work is investigating as not just what the final product is, but also reflecting on what that colonized past is Rib is not just a bad guy, but it's because of what the hero have provoked to this certain character, and how he then pursue the narrative, and so on. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving you the full story, but this is just a small example of what that means, and how not just me, but a handful of many Cambodian-American are confronting the colonized past. And when we begin doing that, we start questioning, right?
It's like there's like a negative and a positive. There's this weird camaraderie, I feel like, that communities of color have, because we can all relate to having to tell our own stories, because the default often is not including our history and our past. Even being in Lowell, where the Cambodian population is the second largest in America, it's still, there's still effort that you're putting in through your artwork and just through your existence, and having to be the one to push forward these narratives. And I think focusing really on the local part, I know you had a really poignant question you wanted to pose to some folks in the audience. Feel free.
I do want to pose this question because I think it's so important. I want you all to put up your 10 finger and start naming 10 BIPOC artists. 10 BIPOC artists in our low community. Take a minute and just count to yourself, right? Can you do that? So this is the dialogue that I think we should have as a community is, where do we have a place for BIPOC artists? Have we showcased their work, right? People of color are here, and we are here to enrich the larger textile of Lowell, the larger fabric of Lowell, right? Start naming that. And are we also listening to our youth as well? Are we also showing them the way, right? And if we're not, should we begin doing that? And I think Free Soil is doing it. You're creating a platform for us to be here. One by one, we all can start counting as a community. And next thing you know, we'll reach beyond 10. And next thing you know, we'll have a directory to this larger BIPOC community.
Yeah, because until the community reflects the richness that we see walking down the streets, every sector, we will have to continue to be our own ecosystem and put each other on and tap into each other. So Chummeng, in the interest of time, before we open it up to Q&A, I just want to have you share with folks listening, as an artist of color in Lowell, what do you need?
As an artist of color in Lowell, I would love to see an exhibition space dedicated to young people below my generation and so forth. And I want to see an exhibition space for BIPOC artists. Run and led by BIPOC people.
Yes.
Run and led by BIPOC artists.
Beautiful.
And people, yes. People
Thank you, Chummeng.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, so we have a couple moments for Q&A.
Yes.
So anyone in the audience, anyone watching on YouTube, anyone have a question for Chummeng? And I think in person we have this mic, unless I'm correct. Okay. I can also ask you another one.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit about any upcoming projects that you have?
Yeah, so I'm taking this body of work to the next level, both performatively, visually, and object. So I straddle between the idea of art and design. So often enough, I would try to solve a problem, but also a part of solving that problem, I would create an object that just failed to function, and that's it. that's often where it leads to. But I'm still just trying to discover what these sketches can be and what. And if you guys have a chance, please take a look at those sketches and be tactile with them. I don't mind. I love the idea that when my audience are tactile.
Yes.
But yeah, this is my next step, is just to explore that. And I'm also working with the dance troupe to preserve another piece. I'm working with Pusita Hoi to preserve a classical dance drama that has not been staged yet for a century. And we're only reviving a small segment of it. And hopefully that we're able to gather up the master and catch that last glimpse, that last breath.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, Raysiam?
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm curious. You definitely put a lot of emphasis on oral storytelling, an oral tradition and things of that nature as well. I'm very curious to know what you think about digital archiving, and if that has a room for anything within your art, not just within oh, we have all these documents in a database, but within 3D collections, within like video, documentaries, and I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, they play a big part in me attempting to collect and reconcile with everything. There's the Southeast Asian Digital Archive that I run by Sue Kim and Pistamai Oi, that I go back and review. There are Bopana Digital Archive that I go back and review all the time, and I spend 50% of my time there. And by the time I reach to a point of creation of that huge drawing, I visited many archives of modernism of Emily Van work. I visited the Southeast Asian Digital Archive. I visited maps, Google Maps even, and just like redigging these memory, and even networking with a lot of photographers in Cambodia to share a glimpse of their photo for me to collage and explore the work. Digital archive play an important role, and our community need to have access to them. And when we access to them, we're able to collectively share not just our oral storytelling, our recording, our stories. We can imagine what that can be collectively. We can imagine how to write history from our community, from our BIPOC artists, from our BIPOC historians that nurture the archive. Yeah, it's important. It's very important in the community, and we need to have it, and we need to collectively contribute to it.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
one last thing, and that
Yes.
is the evidence, right?
Yeah.
These are tangible evidence, tangible written record of our people. So we need more. Yes.
No pressure, folks. Anything you'd like to chat about, Chummeng, that we may not have had time for?
I think I should. I said enough. Please feel free to have any questions. I'm open to any questions and dialogue. I love having a dialogue with everyone, even digital, even
Yes.
through Facebook or chat. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Chummeng, thank you so much.
Thank you, Krista.
Thank you.
for having me.
For everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us. Please follow Chummeng on social media, support his work, support his projects. I also want to give another thanks to our presenting sponsor for making this series possible, Enterprise Bank. Thank you so much. If you're interested in supporting the Free Soul Arts Collective upcoming projects, we have volunteer opportunities, we have e-newsletter sign up opportunities, social media opportunities. So please follow us, engage with us. Next month, we're going to be chatting with visual artist Gwendolyn Lanier, really exciting. And then in February, we have a double hitter coming. We're going to be talking to rapper Chitashi and also having a panel with every artist that we have spoken to this year. So thank you all for coming. Have a great day, and thank you, Chummeng.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Woo!